In the last decade, Iran has expanded its military might across the Middle East by training and funding Shi'ite militia groups in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. The most successful of these groups are the Hezbollah army in Lebanon and the Houthi rebels in Yemen, both of which now hold significant power in their countries. The mastermind behind this Iranian strategy is Qassem Soleimani, the commander of the Quds Force, or Jerusalem Force of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps.
He is hailed as one of the most successful figures that enables to promote the Iranian goals regionally.
Yaron Schneider is an expert in the growing network of proxy militias that Soleimani oversees.
He was a field commander during the Iran-Iraq war back in the 80s and got to a very high rank in the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and specifically professionalized in the military operations outside of Iran.
Schneider sees the recent escalations between Israel and the Hezbollah army in Lebanon as part of Soleimani's greater strategy in the region. This past weekend, Israel struck Hezbollah operatives on the Syrian border who planned to launch a drone into Israel. Israel is also blamed for sending 2 drones into Lebanon, which crashed and exploded into a Hezbollah media office in southern Beirut.
This is something unprecedented since 2006.
Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah vowed to retaliate against Israel with the help of Iran.
I'm a friend of Iran. I'm willing to go to Iran to bring whatever the Lebanese army needs to become the strongest army in the region.
This close relationship between Iran and militia groups like Hezbollah is part of Soleimani's goal to create an Iranian presence on its enemies' front doors, mainly Israel and Saudi Arabia. However, Hezbollah is unique because it is an influential Lebanese national movement that must also consider its own interests.
I think that there is limit to what he can do by Hezbollah, because Hezbollah still wants to keep deterrence between the organization and Israel along the Lebanese border.
Schneider says much of the Quds Force activity today were made possible by the Arab Spring uprisings, which took place across the Middle East and Northern Africa starting in 2010. Despite the relative success of Hezbollah and the Houthis, Soleimani has faced several setbacks, mainly from Israel, which has targeted his operations with hundreds of airstrikes during the Syrian civil war. So how has he managed to keep his job despite these setbacks? First, he's well connected.
He's considered to be one of the closest persons to the leader of Iran, Khamenei.
Second, his strategy is focused on the long term.
They don't care about defeats that they currently had in Iraq or Syria or even in Lebanon. They think about the long term. No more big wars, but confrontation that is based on military groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and newer groups that they try to recruit and build in Syria in order to confront with Israel, to erode its ability to defend itself along its borders. Soleimani is actually the one that carries out this duty.
As a result, Soleimani has become a big target for Israel, which has reportedly tried to assassinate him in the past. Since the 2006 Lebanon war, Israel and Iran have been fighting a war between wars, as Israel clashes with Iranian proxy groups. Soleimani's long-term strategy will continue to be tested as he tries to surround Israel with allies of Iran.